though. Bar was buzzing, a typical Friday night scene for off-duty Marines. Laughter echoed off the walls, glasses clinked, and stories of training and deployment filled the air. Among them was Sergeant Miller, a man whose muscles seemed to have muscles, and whose reputation for being a bit of a hothead was well known in his unit. He was holding court at a corner table, his voice booming over the general din. That's when she walked in. She was of average height, with a quiet confidence that made her stand out more than any flashy outfit could. She moved with a certain grace, an economy of motion that spoke of discipline. Her hair was tied back neatly, and her eyes scanned the room with a calm, analytical gaze. She ordered a water at the bar and found a quiet spot, content to observe. Miller and his buddies, however, saw her as an easy target for their boisterous fun. "Hey, sweetheart, you look a little lost," Miller slurred, swaggering over to her table. "This is a Marine's bar. Maybe you're looking for the library." His friends snickered. The woman simply smiled, a small, polite curve of her lips. "Oh, I think I'm right where I need to be, Sergeant," she said, her voice even and steady. Her calm demeanor seemed to infuriate Miller. He was used to being the center of attention, the alpha in any room. "Sergeant, how do you know I'm a sergeant?" he demanded, leaning over her, trying to use his size to intimidate her. "You've been checking me out." "I notice things," she replied, her gaze unwavering. "Like the fact your uniform's gig line is off, and you're disrespecting the very cause you claim to represent." The bar went quiet. Miller's face turned a shade of crimson. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not by a civilian woman. In his mind, he had to reassert his dominance. "You've got a big mouth for a little thing," he growled. He reached out and shoved her, intending to knock her off her stool and make a spectacle. But what happened next stunned everyone. The moment his hand made contact, she moved. It wasn't a panicked reaction. It was a fluid, practiced motion. She used his momentum against him, redirecting his force. In a blur of movement, she was on her feet, had his arm in a lock, and swept his legs out from under him. Miller, all 200 pounds of him, hit the floor with a loud thud. She stood over him, not with anger, but with a look of stern disappointment. She applied just enough pressure to his wrist to keep him pinned. 2. You never, ever put your hands on someone unless you're prepared for the consequences. "Sergeant," she said, her voice now carrying an authority that cut through the silence. "Is that understood?" Miller, groaning and utterly humiliated, could only nod. One of Miller's friends, a slightly more sober corporal, recognized the insignia on a small, discreet pin on her jacket. His eyes widened in disbelief. "Mars single quotes M. ... That's Navy SEAL Trident." The woman released Miller and helped him to his feet, her expression softening slightly. "It is," she confirmed. She then looked directly at the stunned group of Marines. "My name is Commander Williams. And next week, I'll be overseeing your joint training exercise. We're going to have a long talk about conduct, respect, and what it truly means to be a leader." A wave of shock and dread washed over Miller and his friends. They hadn't just picked on a random woman. They had assaulted the commander of a Navy SEAL unit who was about to become their worst nightmare in training. Commander Williams turned to leave, pausing at the door. "See you on Monday. Marines, be ready to work." The door swung shut behind her, leaving a bar full of speechless soldiers and one very, very regretful sergeant. He had learned a hard lesson that night. Never judge a book by its cover, especially when that cover might be a highly decorated Special Forces commander. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe for more stories.